every single business should have a large event that they are perpetually promoting. Hey docs, hope you're super well. I just thought I'd jump on here and do a quick video for you, specifically around the topic of retention. Anyone who's in my position or anyone that does any type of consulting will tell you that, especially in this space, in the chiropractic space, is the predominant question we get normally centers around three things. It's, hey, how do we, doc, can you please help us attract new customers or patients? And a marketing question. The next one normally has something to do around the conversion of those customers or potentials or prospects, if you call them at that stage, into care. And then the last question, and probably the most important question, or depending on the phase of practice that you're in, is how to retain those customers. And they all deserve their own book or thesis. I have written a book on new patients called New Patient Avalanche. I highly recommend you read it. It's how I generated 10,000 new patients for my own practices. I had 8 practices myself. I generated 10,000 new patients a year for my own practices. I now have an agency that works with well over 100 practices around the world, and we generate 10,000 new patient leads every single month. We are by far the biggest testing ground of what's working right now in the market across the world. And then we help docs with a book that I wrote called Conversion Alchemy, and it breaks down the steps exactly how to do day 1 and day 2 and the scripts and the psychology around that process. The subject of retention is normally wafted over by most consultants and coaches, and typically discussed in terms of just a report of findings, how to rock a report of findings, how to set context, and it's very important. But in reality, it deserves its own book. Keep an eye out for it soon, because I just did 6 hours worth of content at my mastermind that just finished this weekend, just on the subject of retention. That's all we covered for 6 hours, retention. And I'm going to cover for you like 3 or 4 strategies right now that are absolutely essential for retention if you want retention. Now, let me caveat this by saying, if you don't have to do anything about it, tell you. But if you want retention, you do have to do what I'm about to tell you. You may not want to do what I'm about to tell you, but assuming you actually want lifetime patients that are a pleasure to work with, that refer, that don't need to be resold every single appointment, and therefore you enjoy practice, you will need to do some of at least strategies I'm about to teach you right now. And I guess, if we talk about the event I just had, we started the event by studying the greats. Where else would you start? Now, we all talk about BJ Palmer, we talk about philosophy, we talk about these things, but we don't really go deep into those subjects, because if you actually picked up a book and read any of the stuff that BJ used to teach at the college, you would see incredible classes, and you would study it. The great little book, by the way, BJ Palmer, The Unknown Story of BJ Palmer. And when you study who the first senior members of faculty were, there's an incredible doctor there that is mentioned many times, Dr. Harry Rieder. And Dr. Harry Rieder wrote a book in 1924 called The Chiropractic Advertiser, right? And first of all, you should own the book. And it's fascinating. I open it often and I study it, and it's just epic. But if you actually look at it, when we talk about studying the greats, we think that means just tell the story, just get clear on the principles. And of course, here's one first principle of the 7 hours I did for my mastermind members was never dilute your message, because no great business dilutes their message. They all have a clear message that is first of all, it's a simple message that's repeated more times than you could possibly repeat something, easy to understand. There couldn't be an easier message than above, down, inside out. What made the body healed the body. It's not how you feel, it's how you heal. There couldn't be an easier message than that. However, that being said, there are about 47 other strategies that go along with the principle of retention. Right? So you read page 86 of Dr. Rieder's book, which you can see. I have notes everywhere. In 1924, 100 years ago, The headline is Keeping Your Patients Interested. And he goes on to say, unless the patient is constantly having chiropractic kept before him, he soon drifts into the habit of neglecting to boost the chiropractic as he formerly did, Therefore, various means of keeping that interest alive are used. And he goes on to describe that some chiropractors who have the ability to do so have found that lectures on chiropractic are a great aid in keeping old patients interested. And in the producing of new patients. Wow, nothing new there. Who would have known? A workshop might actually get people not only into a class, but reactivate old patients and get new patients. He says, every few weeks or months, they send invitations to their entire list of old patients to attend a lecture at a given place and time. These patients are also invited to bring along friends. He then goes on to say that some people may not feel comfortable doing lectures or talks out of fear, really, of public speaking. And he goes, many of them send a piece of chiropractic literature to their entire list of old patients once every single month. And this is a most productive method. Whether it be the Chiropractic Educator, which is their publication, or some other monthly publication which is interesting and directly to the point, makes little difference. As he goes on and on and on, and he says these publications should be sent as a courtesy and purely for the purpose of keeping alive the interest of the former patients in chiropractic. Now, part of my mastermind is, look, I've been preaching this for so long that I just decided to do it for my patients. And now we produce a 4-page print newsletter for all my inner circle members. We literally do it for them, epically written. And we even produce 2 different sets of researchers for those that are want to legislatively can produce research or put research out there that is more, let's call vitalistic in approach, and a different one which is more pain-based in approach for people who can't legally put that stuff out there, right? So we produced even different types of newsletters for people. But it's a 4-page newsletter. We even pull the Google reviews from their website and do their branding. It's done for you as part of my service. We also do the emails for my inner circle members. We send a topically written email every single week into their inbox that they just copy and paste. The point is retention. You have to stay alive. You have to stay in front and center of your old patients and existing patients. So there's just 2 strategies I want to teach you. Dan Kennedy says every single business should have a large event that they're perpetually promoting. Patient appreciation events simply couldn't be a better opportunity to retain. Dan Kennedy goes on to say there's a fundamental change in the relationship between the customer and the business owner at these live events, particularly when they are surrounded by another bunch of raving fans. Let me go further and say you may never ever emulate this in any way, shape or form by any other methods. Nothing will ever replace the power of a gathering. I haven't even got to orientation classes yet. I'm just talking about a gathering. You know, there's a good friend of mine, Dr. Danny Knowles, when I asked him once, was the single best patient retention strategy you ever used of your whatever many year career? I'll never forget, he said to me, every single week we choose a patient of the week. That patient of the week, every quarter I take each patient of the week, that's 12 of them, to dinner. When you look back at his lifetime patients, without fail, the patients that referred the most and stayed the longest, well, guess who? The patients that he took for dinner, which is biblical in nature around breaking bread. So when people say to me, Ryan, I want to retain patients, and think that a snappy day 2 or report of finance or script is going to do it for you, you're very mistaken. That is one part, a very important part about setting context and future pacing, but it's just a small part in it. You know, we recently, as I say, did this event on retention, and one of the books we studied was a book called Purpose Driven Church. Now, one of my mentors, Dan Kennedy, says you should read Purpose Driven Church and then you should start again and read the entire thing again. And your religious leanings are irrelevant. he's agnostic at best, and he's not very religious. But as a tool to build a gathering, there could be no better book for you to study. And guess what it talks about in the book? Next point, mandatory requirements and high expectations. At Saddleback Ranch, or Saddleback Church, every single person is expected to go through a mandatory new member class. He goes on to talk about it only being 4 hours. Right? Now, you don't have to do the next thing. You don't have to do this. But if you want retention, studies have shown many, many times that how you start a relationship absolutely affects how the relationship continues. And I've got a 13-point checklist that I teach my members on what you should cover in an orientation class. Let me make another point. It should absolutely be mandatory. Now, I know that many of you are going to want to fight me on this. It's irrelevant. Let me be clear. You do not have to do an orientation class. However, if you would like retention, I would highly recommend you do an orientation class. There could be no better way, which I'll run through with you in a moment. There could be no better way, I'll briefly run through in a moment, for you to set context. I've got a 13-point checklist. I'm going to quickly read them for you now. Point 1 is talking about what is health. Ask the patient, what is health? What is health? And often they'll say things like symptoms, and they'll say things feeling better. And then you give them a great question to ask is, what's the first sign of heart disease in 90% of people? It's a heart attack. So how do they feel the day before? Do they feel okay? And you set that context. Point number 2 is the body is smart. That while it does send you signals, but only less than 10% of the nervous system is responsible for processing pain. So you're setting questions that although they're not to be ignored, and what does modern day medicine do is simply numb the symptoms of it and no one addresses the cause. Point number 3 leads nicely into cause versus symptoms, right? What's the difference between the cause and symptoms, and what do we do as chiropractors? Point number 4 is we talk about the body being a self-healing, self-regulating organism. How miraculous it is. Just think about how miraculous it is that a cut heals. I always tell a story about if I had a cadaver in front of me now and we cut the cadaver, would the cut heal? What's the only thing that's missing is the master system, the nervous system. Point number 5 is we talk about innate intelligence. Point number 6 we talk about what protects, and how does innate intelligence, what is the means that innate intelligence works within the body through our nervous system, our master system. What protects that nervous system, master system? Point number 6 is the spine protects the nervous system. Point number 7 is modern day life is stressful. We weren't designed to live we weren't designed to work on concrete all day. We weren't designed to sit all day. We weren't designed to eat the foods that we do. So we have physical, chemical, emotional stresses or thoughts, traumas and toxins, and how that affects the subluxation. Point number 8 is what causes subluxation. Point number 9 is what a subluxation does. Point number 10 is how we know you're subluxated. And you talk about your x-rays. Now, you've done your day 2 already in most cases. So you talk about your x-rays, you talk about your surface EMGs, you talk about the process. And you also future pace about the re-x-rays if you do that. And you future pace about the surface EMG tests that we do in the future. There's something called Hawthorne's law, which specifically talks of, or FECT, I believe, which specifically talks about how human beings behave, the behavior of a human being and compliance of a human being changes when they know they're going to be tested or measured in the future. So if you're doing cervical x-rays and wedge exercises, or you're doing mirror image exercises, and they know that at some point that is going to be assessed, their compliance goes to the roof and their retention goes to the roof, right? Point number 11 is what we do if you're a subluxated. We talk about course of care, we talk about frequency, and we talk about the whole process. Point number 12 is what you can do. So we talk about the diets and pro-inflammatory. We talk about whether it's rich in omega-3s, and we talk about the mirror exercises. We talk about their stretches, their exercises, the whole process. We talk about all that. Point number 13 is demonstration. So we talk about before and after and show that's an orientation class in a nutshell. If you want this information, just contact me and I can give you the 13-point checklist. But the point is, there absolutely should be some type of key specific process that you put the customer through or the new patient through that will set up the relationship for the time. There's this brilliant quote that Dan Kennedy has and you'll hear me talk about Dan Kennedy a lot because he was one of my key mentors in business. And he talks about you should change the key is to change the thought process that the sale, the conversion is happened where most businesses think it's happened, and change that so that you only begin the conversion process where most businesses think the conversion has already happened, i.e. the care plan's been sold or the schedule of care has been agreed to. That's just the beginning of this care process. So what would you do? You put them through an orientation class, mandatory. And then last point in this video that I want to talk about is, again, you don't have to do this. If you want retention, trust me, you're going to need to do this. Some type of clinic policy or terms of acceptance. So we have a list of things that I recommend you cover in the terms of acceptance or policy. By the way, we did 6 hours of this. I'm going to finish this video very shortly. But some things you address in your terms of acceptance are your appointments, and reiterate that. This is the front desk does that. What's the frequency? Why the frequency is important? How healing happens? And their frequency. We're also going to talk about the program exams, what's going to happen in the program exams, why we book those. We're going to talk about scheduling and why we book that ahead of time, right? We're going to talk about scheduling rules or visit etiquette. So we may talk about, hey, listen, you might be on 3 times a week. Life happens. We're going to book those out ahead of time. So as we mentioned, we're going to book those progress exams ahead of time. Now, life happens, and there are going to be appointments that you can't make. But at this practice, to keep you on schedule, Dr. Ryan requires you to make those appointments up in the same week. Now, what happens is you phone the patient without giving them context in an orientation class, without doing terms of acceptance or clinic policy or practice policy, and then you say and then you try to schedule them the same week, where by the time we do it, they've already heard it, not once, but possibly 3 times, because we may be addressing the progress exam also. Right? Next point that I highly recommend, you talk about the health class. The CAs talk about the health class. This is after day 2 regularly, normally, once they've committed to a care. You talk about why we do this health class. These are whatever you want to call your health class, healing faster or better class or whatever you want to call it. And then we tell them that this is just how we do it at the practice. The reason we do that is the patient that attend, Dr. Ryan has worked with thousands of patients. And we know that the patients that attend these health classes not only heal the fastest, but they maintain the results for the longest. Isn't that a good idea? So all patients go through our orientation class, or whatever class you want to put it, orientation class, there could be a sexier name for that. And then as part of our clinic policy, and this has nothing to do with your practice, but our practice was that as part of Ried's policy, we believe in, the last thing we want is for you to be benefiting from chiropractic care and to be unsubluxated, for the rest of your family to be subluxated. So Dr. Ryan has a policy that he checks all family and spouses for free, right, within the first month, whatever we want to say. So that's a referral seed that your teams, and it's part of the clinic policy. And lastly, and most importantly, make them sign it. Go through the process of signing it with them. Now, there are nuances to this. In Purpose-Driven Church, it talks about expecting mandatory requirements and high expectations of customers are not a bad thing in of itself. It's the way that businesses do it that mess it up. So in summary, I'm going to say this. First of all, if you're not doing some type of gathering, whether it's a patient appreciation event or patient of the weeks that you take for dinner with someone, there could not be a more fundamental change in relationship than that. Next, what we call environment penetration. They were doing it 100 years ago. 1924, this book was written. Sending something in the post. You can, obviously emails are important too, but physically in the post, we just do it for our members. But there could not be a more powerful thing for you to do to own a piece of real estate in their house, or i.e. environment penetration, monthly newsletter or something. Now this can also form the form of birthday cards, Christmas cards, things like that. Expectancy also increases retention. Right? Things that can be generally expected but not specifically expected are also increasing, i.e. surprises. If you know that you send birthday gifts, they kind of might begin to expect it from the practice that you send a birthday present or birthday card, but it's not specifically expected, so that counts as a surprise, right? And then high or what we call mandatory requirements or high expectations. And it is true that certain people will not continue with your business, any business, if we have any expectations or any mandatory requirements. But boy, are you going to work with people you want to work with. Boy, you're going to work with great customers. Boy, is it going to be easier for the front desk. Boy, are you going to have people stay around for longer. And guess what? You're going to have much better results. Because isn't it true that a patient that gets adjusted regularly for your schedule, let's say 3 times a week for the full 3 months or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, gets better results than a patient that drops out and only has 2 adjustments? Of course it is. You see, wellness care and retention is only win-win. You look better because your results are better. The patient gets better results because under wellness care. Their families see the better results. They refer more. They stay longer. They talk about you more positively. And guess what? You actually have fun dealing with the people you want to deal with. So, I'm going to say this. Point number 1 of the whole event was don't water down your message. No business that is truly a great business waters down their message. And I believe we've become soft by watering down our message, by not requiring people to go through mandatory processes like health classes, like clinic policies. And then we've also got soft by not going the extra mile, like sending stuff in the post, right? Like giving value, like patient appreciation events. So I hope you found this video helpful. I love and appreciate you. I'm rooting for you. You need only send me a personal message if you need any help, and I promise you, myself and my team, we've got 15 team members. We work with hundreds of chiropractors around the world right now. We are multi-7-figure business, and we only work with chiropractors and helping them grow. I've helped many practices double and triple, and I have my first practice ever that is very close to growing my 7 figures since they met me. They joined me on £600,000, and they're on track for getting close to 1.6 million pounds. They came to me the other day and they said, do you realize you've always helped us grow by 7 figures? Grow by 7 figures. Not 7 figures, grow by 7 figures. So if I can help you in any way, let me know. I love and appreciate you. I'm rooting for you. And see you guys soon.